Welcome. We're pleased to invite you to WEAD, Women Eco-Artist Dialogue. And today we will be presenting Dancing in the Borderland, the Past, Present, and Future, Art and Science and Innovative Teaching, with two professors from Diane Ullman and Emily Meineke from the Department of Entomology and how do you pronounce that?
Ecology.
At the University of California in Davis. So just a few moments about WEAD. WEAD is a nonprofit volunteer organization which has a directory of over 700 women identified artists. And they are art historians, artists, visual artists, writers, curators, researchers, scientists, and those interested in highlighting the intersection of art and ecological issues. We'll start with land acknowledgement. WEAD's office sits in the territory of the Wichen, the ancestral and unceded land of the Chichoneo-speaking Ohlone people, the successors to the sovereign Verona Band of Alameda County. You're one of the largest shell mounds in the Bay Area. Our office is 3 blocks away. By the way, if you'd like to put in your own land acknowledgement in the chat, that would be very good. This land was and continues to be of great importance to the Muwakmi Ohlone tribe and other familiar descendants of the Verona Band. We recognize the Muwakmi Ohlone tribe who are campaigning to become federally recognized, the Association of Ramaytush Ohlone, who are researching, revitalizing, and presenting Ramaytush land, and the Confederated Villages of Lejean and the Sogorea Land Trust, who are working to return native land back to Indigenous stewardship. Now I'd like to present our two wonderful presenters. This is exciting. We have an artist and residency program, our artist and science program. And this program is in just kind of in formation now. We've had a few presentations, but we're interested in having a really good communication between science and art. And I have a little Zoom housekeeping. We'll be recording this session. And if you have questions during the session, please put them in the chat. And if there's extra noise from your space, then we will mute you. We'll stop the first recording after the presentation at approximately 5 p.m. and then immediately start a second recording for questions and answers, and we will be ending at 5:30. The connection between art and science came to life in 1995 when the University of California Davis professor Diane Ullman and artist Donna Billick had a late night epiphany about using art to teach insect science, which gave birth to an undergraduate course at UC Davis called Art, Science, and the World of Insects. And that went on to insect-themed lectures combined with hands-on studio sessions, synergized creativity, and led to exciting individual student projects and collaborations resulting in a large-scale public artwork permanently installed in Washington, D.C., which it's the first time I really learned about their program. And as well as the formation of the UC Davis Art Science Fusion Project, which was co-founded by Ullman and Billick. And in 2020, Assistant Professor Emily Meineke joined the UC Davis, and she is carrying the connection between art and science forward. This presentation celebrates the creation of this teaching paradigm, its accomplishments, and its future. Diane Ullman is an entomologist and artist, and her passion is in connecting art and science in education and public art. She has a BS in horticulture from the University of Arizona and a PhD in entomology from UC Davis. She joined the Davis faculty in '95 after serving on the faculty of University of Hawaii, and has been chair of the UC Davis Department of Entomology 2004-2005, associate dean for undergraduate academic programs for the College of Agricultural and Environmental Sciences, and co-founded and director of the UC Davis Art Science Fusion Project since September 2006. She's a fellow of the American Association of Advancement for Science and the Entomological Society of America, and received numerous national and teaching awards. And we can put her website in the chat. Emily Meineke is an assistant professor of entomology. She's an entomologist who studies insect-plant interactions under human influence. Her research focuses on plant species such as street trees, crop wild relatives, and plants that support rare insect species. She's been able to study the change in insect populations over large stretches of time by examining the damages they left behind on erbium specimens. She has a deep interest in the connection between art and science. She's been able to connect her work examining the changes in species populations from herbarium species specimens with art. For example, working in collaboration with artists Leah Sobsey, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing these names right, and Robin Buchnick, you can correct me, please, Emily, later on, to bring Search of Thoreau's Flowers, an exploration of change and loss to the Harvard Museum of Natural History. At the foundation of this exhibit are the species, many from Thoreau, in Harvard herbaria. Her passion is for these connections led her to innovative teaching strategies, including teaching art science and the world of insects at UC Davis. All right, so I'm pleased to present. Diane is going to start, and then Emily is going to share her presentation.
So what I want to share with you is my experience, what I'm calling here dancing in the borderland, where you have art and science, two typically very separate entities. And what I've learned is that at their borderland, where they connect, there's tremendous synergy. So what I want to talk with you about is how that synergy has been used in using art and science in an innovative teaching program. So I'm mostly going to talk with you about how this program began, what the inspiration for it was, how we proceeded in the early days, and how the program evolved. And then my colleague, Emily Meineke, will talk about what's happening now and what happens as we go forward in the future. So I spent almost 10 years at University of Hawaii. I had a very robust research and teaching program there. I learned that I loved teaching. In my last year at University of Hawaii, I got breast cancer, and I received chemotherapy and went through a lot during that time. And I was really determined that as I went forward in my life, I wanted to really make a difference. So I was thrilled when I was recruited to University of California, Davis, which is renowned for its respect for collaboration and for innovation. So I felt like this was really going to be a dream come true to work in this environment. I didn't know, frankly, exactly what I was going to do, but I knew that I wanted to do something special and something that would really make a difference for people. So when I arrived here in late 1994, I met Donna Billick, and I took a ceramics class from her. And in the meantime, you might go, why was I taking a ceramics class? I was doing a lot of work in my lab and teaching, and I'd been assigned a lot of very large courses, courses that had 250, 300 people in them. And I really felt like that was not the way that I wanted to teach. Standing in front of a group of people, delivering lectures, not getting a lot of feedback, not seeing a lot of interaction between the students. So I knew I wanted to do something different, and I was looking for alternatives. So I took a ceramic class from Donna, and she asked me to come out to her studio and make insects for a 4,000 square foot ceramic mosaic mural she was making for downtown Sacramento. So I started making these insects, and on the left side of the screen, you should see these mating crickets that I made for that mural. And, I had already been an entomologist for quite a long while, and I just couldn't believe how much I was learning by building these insects out of clay. So one really hot summer night, late at night, as I was leaving Donna's studio, we started talking about how interesting it was that we had this interface between her experience as an artist and my experience as a scientist. And I was telling her, I just couldn't believe how much entomology I was learning, entomology being insect science, how much I was learning making these insects for her. And we kind of had this aha moment that we should try teaching entomology with art. I took that idea to my department actually at a teaching retreat, and the idea was embraced by my department. And that led to the creation of Art, Science, and the World of Insects, a course that's still being taught today by Dr. Meineke. And Donna and I started pursuing this partnership. And from that, bigger and bigger ideas grew as we saw how powerful the creative spark was at the interface between art and science. And we ultimately had the opportunity to co-found a program called the UC Davis Art Science Fusion Program that was joined by other faculty who were teaching in different areas, but again, using this connection between art and science. So you might ask, like, what were our goals in this? And, in the beginning, quite honestly, for me, I just wanted to engage students in loving insects. I'm an entomologist. I love insects. I wanted to share that and draw undergraduates into entomology. But as we got into this, we discovered that this was like planting a seed. So the why for us became much bigger than just teaching one topic. So we wanted to see students grow, start to rely on their own observations and their own research. We wanted to create a situation in which they really learned to think for themselves, that they could gain environmental literacy because, we were very aware of climate change. We were very aware of how important it was for students to learn to love what's around them and observe what's around them. For us, we could see that communication was really critical. In the sciences, I think even now, we need this perhaps more than ever, to be able to communicate clearly to other people what is important about the science that we do. So we started getting very interested in design thinking and how we could teach students to use visual narrative to communicate something about science using art. In teaching very large classes, one thing that's clear is that students are placed in an environment where they are highly competitive with each other. But when they get out of school and into the workplace, teamwork is valued, collaboration is valued, communication is valued, and they haven't been in that environment. So we wanted to create an environment where students would have that collaboration and communication. So this was very much like planting a seed that ultimately led to us working with our students to create not only individual projects, but very large scale pieces of art, public artwork, permanently installed. And that artwork allowed the students and the people who view the artwork to gain creativity and environmental awareness. So to do work using art at that level, you need a space to do it in. And the first about 9 years of our work, we bounced around from spot to spot. We really didn't have our own space where we could reach our full potential. In 2005, I became an associate dean and had the good fortune to have an office next to the person that controlled all of the space in our college. And I told him, I'm really struggling. This is what I need. And he said, well, I have something in mind. Let me show you. And we got the space that we currently work in today. We call it the Labudio. That term was coined by Donna Billick. And lab plus studio. And it really is that. And I'm retired now. I'm emerita, but I am around here quite a bit. And if you want to come visit, it's quite an amazing space. I can't stress enough the importance of having that maker space. And in the time since Dr. Meineke joined us, the dean actually extended our space. So we now have a really robust facility where we can do large scale projects. To work on the level that we were able to work on since 1996, you really, in the environment of the academy, you've got to have support from the administration. And we were fortunate to be supported at the highest levels with the chancellor, provost, and dean. We had great partnerships with the Arboretum, with the campus master planner. The then chair of my department, Rob Page, was very supportive, made sure we were funded. And faculty across the university supported us. David Rizzo let us cross-list our class in science and society. And Emily Griswold from the Arboretum helped us with many, many projects. So what I'd like to do, I've kind of showed you, this is how our program started. I want to talk about the evolution of our paradigm for teaching. So by no means did we start where we're at today. And I'm sure that Dr. Meineke, Emily is going to continue evolving this paradigm. Where we always start is by creating the intellectual context for whatever topic we're working on. So in art science in the world of insects, it's entomology, but we have taught how meditation affects the brain, the chemistry of smell, hummingbird health. We've taught all kinds of topics using this same strategy. But in every case, we create a context, an intellectual context for the students with lectures. The students then start to take ownership of their own learning, and we encourage them to do their own research and to be observant of the world around them. So not walking around with their faces in their telephones, really looking around them and seeing the world, whether that means we take them out into the Arboretum. It might mean we take them into the Bohart Museum where they can hold live insects and see a fabulous insect collection. Or if we're working on a project that has oaks in it, we might take them out to the Shields Oak Grove where they can look at the different species and see for themselves what they're going to be represented. So we do this right away. We work in a quarter system. That means we have 10 weeks with the students. So the very first week, they're assigned a topic. They know they need to do their research. And the second week, they come in and they share their research. So the students actually become the teachers, and they like listening to each other much more than they like listening to one of us talk. So they learn a lot from one another in sharing their research. At the same time, we start teaching them design theory and design principles. And this aspect of our paradigm was greatly enhanced by Gail Okamura, who was teaching design at UC Davis, and she's now emerita, and she helps us with every project that we do. So we take time to give the students a crash course in design principles. So now they've done their observations, they've done their research, they've presented their research, they know about design principles. It's only the second week of the quarter. And this is when they have to take that information and transform it into a design. So if we're doing individual projects, their design will be towards their individual project. When we're doing large scale public artworks, we tell them where their place is in that artwork, and they design for that. So we take them through a design process that goes from thumbnail sketches to draft designs to final designs, and they present these to each other and they critique one another. We have teaching assistants who help with that critique, and we ourselves are often involved in that critique, and they end up with a final design that has transformed what they've learned in their head to a design that they then can go into the Labudio and fabricate. So you can do this with many different artistic mediums. This happens to be showing students working with clay. But in the Labudio, this is where I see the real magic happen, because this is when they translate from their brain down to their heart and their hands. And they start really thinking about how something's put together. So it's one thing to draw something, it's another thing to build it. So they really learn a lot about the topic that they've taken on in the Labudio. Up in the upper corner here, you see Joss Sanchez. I had the good fortune to take a few workshops from Joss and learn how to screen print. And he then was incredibly generous in guiding me as I equipped the Labudio for screen printing. It's a wonderful medium for students to work with. They can print on pieces that they've made from clay. They can print on tiles. They can print on textiles. So it's a very versatile technique for doing the kind of work that we do. And it's a way that they see their design come to life in a very interesting way. It's also a way they can collaborate because they love to share designs. And you can see that here. This young man has different designs. This is his design right here. And then he has, talked with other people and incorporated their designs in his work. So I told you earlier that we really want students to learn to collaborate. So when we do these large scale pieces of art, we like to bring them out and they collaborate in the installation. Here you're seeing the installation of a piece we call Oak Family Tree. When we do individual projects, we always have an exhibition, so students still get that sense of collaboration and working together when they see all their work exhibited together. Sometimes we can't take them into the field for the installation, but they'll actually prepare the work for installation. This piece is installed at Explore It, which is a science place for young children here in Davis. And so the students prepared it in the Labudio, and then it was taken there to be installed. And then they came back to celebrate the opening when we had an opening for the piece. So the last step in this circle of learning, and I feel like it's really brings things full circle is we have the students reflect on their work. And this is really an important time where they've now shared with each other their research, they've shared with each other their design process, and now they can share how they feel about their actual artwork and what it conveys. So this is a really important step for the students to take. We learned that you can do this with photography, with ceramics, with drawing, with multimedia, with music. And in 2006, we were lucky to get funded to create a program. And other professors, Dr. Wendy Silk, Dr. Terry Nathan, joined us. Wendy is an environmental scientist and a musician. Terry Nathan is an atmospheric scientist and a photographer. So they brought in classes, Earth, Water, Science Song, where the students learned environmental science, wrote songs, and then did a performance, and photography, bridging art and science, where the students studied photography, did their own photographs, and then put on a big exhibit at the end of the quarter. So you can do this with many different art mediums. And not only that, you can teach many different topics using this paradigm. So the paradigm that I just shared with you, you could adapt and apply to almost any artistic medium and any topic that you wanted to teach. Something that came out of this that we talked about, but then we watched it actually evolve, is that as students create this work, no matter what the medium is, they really take ownership of that. They are proud of their work. And when these go into large-scale public artworks, they're very proud to come back and see that after it's installed and to bring their families to see it. So they have a legacy then with the campus and a sense of place. And I think we can all agree that anything that creates community for people is a healthy thing. And so we found this was a real way that students created community at UC Davis. So with these large-scale public artworks, we often engaged in community outreach. So we would bring families into the Labudio and they would learn about the topic, whatever it happened to be at that time. And they would create pieces, and then they can come and see the installed artwork to really have a chance to continue learning from the work. And so do all the people who come to see the work where these artworks are installed permanently. Absolutely integral to the Labudio has been a community of volunteers who come and help us with just about everything that we do. They love interacting with the students, and the students love interacting with them. They come and they help us with all of our installations. They help with every single aspect of the work that we do in the Labudio, and we couldn't really do it without them. So I thought I would kind of end by showing you a few of these large-scale public artworks. Virginia Hinshaw funded our program. She was provost at the time. She had built this restroom. It was the only restroom on this side of campus where our oak grove is. And so we named it Hinshaw Hall after her. And she said, "Oh, I'm just disappointed. It's such an ugly, concrete building." So we took care of that for her with a big valley oak on the front, a reflection of one of the gardens on the side. And on the side that faces the oak grove, we have a family tree of oaks. Here's an example where screen printing was used to create a mural. My colleague Gail Okamura and I, literally, we taught this during the pandemic when the campus was shut down. And the students created their designs, sent them to us. We screen printed them on tiles, sent the students the tiles and all the glazes. They glazed them, sent them back to us, and we fired them and installed this mural. And then this is Nature's Gallery Court, which Mary mentioned in her introduction. This over 2,000 pounds of work traveled to Washington, D.C., where it was in the First Lady's garden, and then came back to UC Davis. And it took us 5 years, but we raised the money to install this on campus. And it's a much loved piece that people visit all the time at UC Davis. More recently, this is the last large-scale mural I did before retiring. This is at our California Raptor Center, which I would encourage all of you to visit. And it's called A Bird's Eye View. So the students did the pieces around the edge that show insects that interact with the raptors. And then our community members did the raptor portraits. So I knew starting in 2019 that I was going to retire in the next 4 to 5 years. And one of my concerns was what's going to happen to my program. Donna Billick had retired in 2014. Wendy Silk retired sometime before. And so, you know, I was wondering, how is this going to carry forward? And then voila, the future arrived. Emily Meineke was hired in the Department of Entomology and Nematology. She came in March 2020, just as the campus shut down for the COVID pandemic. But we were able to email and talk and eventually meet. And she held this interest in the connections between art and science. And I'm going to let her now tell you all about that. So I'm going to stop sharing and let Emily start sharing her work.
Alrighty, is everyone seeing a full screen view of an apparent art piece? And you can hear me? Okay, great. So as Diane said, I'm Emily Meineke, and I arrived at UC Davis in the heart of the pandemic. And I emailed Diane when I was hired here. I didn't know I was going to participate in this class. I didn't know very much about this class, although I learned later that I had heard of it in entomology circles. What I was really emailing Diane about was how to get art integrated into my research program and how to work with artists in a way that was going to be valuable to the university and valuable to the department. And so the kinds of things that I was doing before I started working in the Art Science Fusion program was working on this image from Thoreau's Flowers with the artist named Robin Vuchnik that was mentioned in the beginning, and Leah Sobsey. So we created this exhibit called In Search of Thoreau's Flowers for the Harvard Museum of Natural History. And all of the plants that are in cyanotype, the blue, are in decline or are already extirpated from Thoreau's woods in Concord. And the other ones are thriving. And so these are all herbarium collections that are made by Henry David Thoreau and were digitized. And then we built this out of that, or I should say Robin did, with my help figuring out which plants were in decline. So that was sort of my role, is as the scientist in this project, fact-checking the art and coming up with the ideas for how to display what was happening with global change with the artists. And similarly, Robin created this exhibit that takes all of those plants and creates sort of a kaleidoscope out of them, out of the plants that were in decline. And so if you want to know more about this exhibit, there is a website that's listed at the bottom, and also a Harvard Gazette article and a few other articles about it. And it's going to actually be at the Gregg Museum at NC State in its next iteration. And we plan to keep rolling it across different places if you're ever interested in having it in your area. But I never got my hands dirty doing the art. And in fact, I hadn't done art since the 8th grade because I wasn't really encouraged in that direction, even though I had artistic family members. So when I emailed Diane, she showed me the space, and I was so excited, but also so overwhelmed, because the idea of teaching people art when you have never yourself done it since you were a child is very intimidating, but Diane was also very encouraging and continues to be very involved in the class, as involved as I am. And that is very helpful to me in addition to all of the volunteers. And so the work I'm going to talk to you about today is going to display photos. A lot of them were not taken by me. They were taken by Gail Okamura, Tim Carl, Tiffany Dobbin, and Valerie Jones, who is a volunteer in our department, or in our Labudio. And I want to talk about the first project that Diane and I did together that she sort of encouraged me to come up with. And then I'm going to talk in more detail about a project that we've been working on in the Labudio since she retired. So when I first got to UC Davis, despite the fact that it was a pandemic, I got to meet Steve and Jill Mathiasen. And they are special because they make wine, but also because they live with the land in a way that is just, for lack of a better word, beautiful. They are very educated in how the ecology of Napa Valley works, and they're also endlessly curious about the living things that are around them, in addition to how people can gather around wine and food. And that is another part of my life. So I met them in another part of my life. And so when I was thinking about what to do with the class, Vineyard seemed like something that it's going to be engaging to the students. And also it felt like it might be good to get some of our projects outside of Davis so that people could see what we were doing at UC Davis. And so I felt like this checked a lot of boxes for me. And just to sort of give you a quote that describes Steve and Jill Mathiasen wines bear an agricultural stamp as fresh, and it turns out that I have to move my Zoom, as lively and alive as the best produce at a farmer's market. So even their product is very connected to the land. So this is an image that sort of shows the fact that the Mathiasens invest deeply in ecology, and they also have all kinds of research projects on birds that they host in their land. So this is their tasting room. So this is where people come in and learn about the wine. This is where the wine is produced in addition. And Jill showed us this really ugly wall and said, "Can you do something about this?" And we said, yes, similar to the bathroom that Diane was just talking about at Henshaw Hall. And this is a mock-up of what we would eventually put on that wall in mural form. And so what you're looking at here is a grapevine in the middle, and then surrounding Napa Valley hills and mountains, and then an oak tree on the right side and various wildlife. So it was important to Jill and Steve that we cover a few different topics. One is that they really wanted to see the life of the soil, because that's very important in wine production. They also wanted to be able to show the grapevines in various seasons because they look very different. And so from left to right, we decided to show on the left, like the early spring, the insects and different organisms associated with the vines during that time, and then going toward the right, the entry of the grapes into the ecosystem and the various organisms that enter later in the growing season. And so similar to what Diane described, the students do their work in the Labudio. They go through the same design process that she was just describing. And here they are installing their pieces on the mural, and also some of the community pieces. And this is the mural that is laid out flat in a room that we were able to create this mural. It was the biggest one at the time that we had done, because the dean's office was supporting our work and let us use this expanded space. And so this is the first time that we had been able to build a mural like this flat, and to allow the students to install their pieces flat and then transfer the mural, which I'll show in just a minute. One of the things that we're continuing to lean into is community engagement. And so the Mathiasens were able to invite people from their community to come to the winery and build their own pieces. So different sorts of woodland creatures and oak leaves and other things that people can build. And maybe they won't be perfect, but it doesn't matter. And we engaged all kinds of people. For instance, this little girl whose name is not coming to me right now, she built all kinds of things, including a squirrel. And sometimes I think the coolest thing about these community builds is how people can surprise you. So you can have a really little kid that produces a really beautiful piece. or a little kid that produces something that can look actually terrible, but they're so excited about it. And so we just have a lot of fun and a lot of connection at these events. And so this is Diane helping Steve to make his piece. And then Steve and Jill ended up having their own pieces that ended up being the bottom of the mural in the soil of mycorrhizal fungi. And then this is starting on installation day. And so we take the mural from the Labudio, we carefully transfer it with the help of Amanda Larson, who is a person who moves art professionally and also helps us with our framing. And here we are installing the various elements of the mural that need to be installed on site. For instance, this is a student's piece, and we installed that on site. And then Steve used his forklift to pick the piece up and place it on that wall. And this is what it looked like in the end. And so we're really proud of this piece, and Jill and Steve are also really excited about it. And it gives these people who have done so much for the environment in Napa and have really sacrificed money, sacrificed all kinds of things for the environment. It gives them an opportunity to share with people who come to visit, and thousands of people a year, what their vineyard harbors in terms of insects. And I didn't mention this, but one of the most important parts of this process is that since we have 80 students, we have to choose 80 insects for them to focus on. And the insects are assigned to the students because often they don't know enough about insect diversity to choose anything other than a lady beetle in the beginning or something like that. And so we really try to highlight a lot of the insect diversity that's there and things that people will see when they come to visit Matthiasson Winery. That was our goal. Okay, so then I made a baby, which is why in the flyer I was very pregnant when we were installing at Matthiasson Winery, and really relied on a lot of volunteer help and so on to get this project done. And actually at the unveiling of this mural, I wasn't even able to be present because I was pregnant and giving birth unexpectedly. And the Labudio volunteers and Diane have been very embracing of my child as well. So here are just two people, and there were lots more who helped me sleep while I had my little baby. So we truly have built this really wonderful community that, yeah, that I've never been a part of a community like this, and I really appreciate it. So then I'm going to just show you the final product of the next project that I did after the baby project. It is called Salt Fog in the Wings Beneath, and we just installed this. So this is a very fresh mural. We installed it about a week ago, 2 weeks ago maybe, and it is a mural that shows the California coast, especially the northern coast. And I'll describe a little bit how we landed on this particular mural as I go through. But first, I'm going to talk about the science. So as Diane mentioned, the Arboretum is the ecological heartbeat of our community here in Davis. The Arboretum is, I would say, an exceptional organization in terms of the beauty there, and also in terms of the student engagement. Here in the top right, a lot of classes use the Arboretum as a place for students to gather. And then importantly to me, the Arboretum has these really amazing plant sales. And so they're super aware of which plants might do well with climate change, which plants are associated with which insects, at least to the extent that we understand it, and making sure to get plants out there in the UC Davis community through plant sales and plant growth at the nursery, the Arboretum Teaching Nursery, that will sustain our community through climate change and make sure it stays green here. And so in particular, what I'm interested in, and what a lot of people at the Arboretum are interested in, but what's under-researched, is how adapting to climate change might affect plants' ability to support insects. And so insects rely on being able to lay their eggs on particular plants, have their caterpillars eat particular leaves. In addition, they rely on plants for pollen and nectar. So these are resources that are very high in protein, very high in sugar, respectively. And the insects actually can't get this concentration of resources that they get from plants anywhere else. And so if our landscape suddenly becomes xeric climate adapted, and we have plants from, for instance, the Southwest that are super good at not using a lot of water, but they also don't provide a lot of nectar, or they don't provide a lot of pollen, then we're not able to support that next layer of biodiversity, the insects. And then, of course, all of the layers of biodiversity that depend on those insects are not going to be expected to do very well with climate change. And so in our yards, where we have the most control over biodiversity, I was interested in understanding how what we do could make it so that our community still has a really biodiverse insect fauna moving forward. So a natural topic to focus on is water in California. It's very dynamic where we live. And so in the Central Valley, it rains a lot during the wintertime, and then spring and summer and fall hit, and it rains none. So we see our landscapes change from these green landscapes that you're seeing on the left to practically very dried out in the summertime. And what's really interesting about this community in Davis, and actually all the urban communities, is that as we're showing on the right here, we are actually watering our plants so that we're extending a lot of times their ability to support insects into the growing season, presumably. And so while insects might have gone dormant historically before we were planting plants like this, insects in the Central Valley that are native here might actually be extending their biology into the summer and the fall. And so we were interested in what this artificial watering is doing to native plants. How much water do the plants really need to be able to support insects? And then what does the watering itself do to those resources that the insects are using, nectar and pollen? So for instance, you might imagine that if you water a plant and the plant's producing nectar, maybe that might make it so the nectar is a lot more abundant, but it also might make it so the nectar is sort of drown out, the sugars are drowned out and not as concentrated. And so it might make it a poorer resource for insects that are looking for sugar. But the truth is, as is the case with a lot of things about insects, we just don't know. And so we wanted to study that, and we wanted to be able to ask not just this sort of question, but all kinds of different questions about how watering and changing water in our landscapes is going to affect the plants that we plant in our gardens going forward, and how we can help people make better and more informed choices. And so what I came up with using, there's a program called the National Science Foundation Early Career Award, and it gives professors awards early in their career. And I developed, along with the Arboretum, what we call the Climate Adaptation Living Lab, or the CALL Garden. And it is the garden where we do just what I said. We're going to do all kinds of projects that allow full irrigation control, which is what you're looking at, 40 plots with complete irrigation control, so that we can do randomized experiments on native and non-native plants to try to understand how they interact with California and our watering and our insect fauna. And so this is our baby plant. This is our baby Phacelia plant. And it is getting protected by bunnies right now. That's why it has a cage on it. And this research is ongoing. And so we haven't even really collected any data yet. This is the first year we're doing it, and we're really excited about getting undergraduates out there to start collecting data. But so now, sort of translating over into the art that we wanted to put in this garden to try to increase public engagement, we wanted to have art that was on the topic of what's going on in the garden, but maybe not like directly on the nose of what's going on in the garden. And so if you take sort of a bird's eye view of California and its water resources, this is what it looks like. And you have the Sierras there in the background, and then the Central Valley with a lot of artificial water. And then we have the Central Coast. And so I think that all Californians can relate to the idea of seeing these water regimes change as you drive across our state. And so one of the things that Emily Griswold and others came up with is, wouldn't it be cool if we could have long murals that span the fence that goes across the back of the teaching nursery and in front of the garden in the Arboretum, that captures these three really beautiful zones in California that have very different water regimes? And so what I'm talking about is here in these yellow boxes, which sort of represent the cross sections that the murals make through California. We have first the the coast mural, and then we have the Central Valley, and then we have Tahoe and the Sierras. And so we focused on the coast first. And Amanda Larson built these beautiful frames for us that are 15 by 5. And this is my little one who's somehow now walking. And so we have these frames out there in the Arboretum sort of ready to be populated with murals by the Entomology 1 students. And our goal is to each quarter moving forward, build another part of this mural. With the 4th frame, you can see there are actually 4 frames here. The 4th frame is going to be about climate change in California and adapting to climate change, and about what we actually learn in these gardens through our science. So that's going to be the last mural that we put in. So if we go back in time, this is the mock-up of the mural that we ended up using for the students to populate with insects and plants. And this mock-up was made by Gail Okamura, and we used it to project on the wall. And then we actually, we drew it on the wall. And then once the students had their designs, they put their designs at scale on the wall, which is our new sort of process that we use. Interestingly, so one of the other things that we're leaning into that Diane was talking about is we're trying to have students work together in teams similar to how they would in a work situation. So anywhere from being part of a company to part of a national park, you really have to have teamwork. And so we assigned students plants and then the insects that are associated with those plants. So the insects that'll typically go to those plants for those resources I was telling you about, we know who they are. And so we had students that were working in teams that were associated with plants and the insects. They were assigned insects that were on those plants. So we also had community builds actually at the Labudio this year. And so this is a kindergarten class that came in and they painted these beautiful little sea creatures that are on the edge of our mural and different seashells and things. We also had an adult community build the day after. So the adults were able to build some of the more difficult elements. So like the sky. So we saved like sort of pieces that everybody could engage in for those community builds. So this is the tougher part of the process. So the students did some of the sticking and grouting of their pieces. And this is Sarah Rizzo right here, who was very involved in this mural as she is in all of our other projects. And the actual grouting and the sticking down of the pieces requires a lot of expertise to get it right. And so volunteers like Sarah who have that expertise are putting in a lot of hours. I think probably over 600 hours in the Labudio to make this work. And then we took the pieces of the mural to the site. We started to install them. And this is installation day with all of the volunteers and people putting in elbow grease. This is once everything was stuck down, me and Gail and Diane. And then this is the finished product, and it is out in the Call Garden. And what we're working on right now is interpretive signage. So you can imagine that it would be pretty hard for someone to visit the garden and first of all, understand what it's about at all, but then try to figure out how the mural is related to the garden. So we want to make that very plain with some orientation materials. And we're also starting to focus on our next mural, which is going to be of the Central Valley. So Diane and Gail and I are working on a design for that. We're trying to also think about enhancing the sustainability of our program. So engaging dedicated donors, eventually trying to come up with an endowment to make sure that this program continues for UC Davis students into the future, because like Diane said, it's unique and it really helps the students to gain all kinds of other things outside of entomological experience. We see the students grow personally in a lot of ways and grow out of some of the anxieties they have about their own performance and into their own curiosity. And so we really want this to continue. We're also leaning into community engagement. And so we're thinking about ways that we can hold workshops and camps and things to try to, again, enhance the sustainability of our program. We're also working on workflows and organization. And so we really want to hire someone full-time who can help us manage the space. And in addition, in the meantime, try and make sure that our team of volunteers always has something fun to do. And then we are leaning into helping the undergraduate students reflect more on their process and their hard work. And so we're on the quarter system here at UC Davis, which means that we plan a lot and then we hit the ground running when we go in for our 10 to 12 weeks that we're around. And by the time that we all get to the end, we're all kind of like, what in the world just happened? And there's a lot of change that the students go through. There's a lot of change that we go through. And so we want the students to start making materials that help them to journal and reflect on what they've been doing. And then again, a lot of the faculty that Diane was mentioning have retired who are part of the Art Science Fusion program. And so I'm starting to engage with other faculty on campus to try to rebuild out our Art Science Fusion program and encourage other people to use the art as a medium for teaching our undergraduates. And so these are all of the people who have helped: Gail Okamura, Sarah Rizzo, Teresa Slack, Val Jones, Heather Eccles, Mary Foe, Susan Delanis, Heejin Chung, Kirsten Sheehy, Amanda Larson, Bill Larson, and a lot of other people who helped us install the mural who were not pictured here. And if I've forgotten you, I'm very sorry. We also have a team of people who installed the Arboretum garden while I was on maternity leave. Very thankful to them. And then we also have people who continue to help with the operations of the garden, who are the Learning by Leading interns. And so I think I speak for Diane and I when I say we're so excited that you're here. Thank you for listening to us and for inviting us. And we'd be happy to take your questions. I'm guessing that we need to end this recording and then start a new one before we do that.
Wonderful. Well, let's give our two presenters a wonderful virtual applause. It's so impressive and inspiring, especially in this time, to continue with science art initiatives. So our plan is that I'm going to tell you a little tiny bit about WEED, Women Eco-Artist Dialogue, and then we will close this recording and we'll start another recording immediately. So now is a good time to put questions in the chat. WEED, Women Eco-Artist Dialogue, is continuing to have presentations every month, and we'd love to get your ideas for new presentations and your support if you'd like to donate to our nonprofit volunteer organization and or to the Davis Project. So there are lots of things to support. And just to remind you that WEED is going to have in April an online exhibition by Isabella LaRocca Gonzalez and a Earth Day workshop in Palo Alto by a young artist named Tara, and a sweeping workshop in the Mission in late April. So we'd love to have you visit our website. All right, well, thank you very much. We'll just stop the recording and recording.